very much. So we've got a couple of discussants. Imogen Clark from Make Space for Girls and Carl McClean from Keep Britain Tidy. Imogen, do you want to go first and then straight over to Carl?
Okay, I suppose that there are three things that struck me. One, coming out of Vanya's talk, and this idea that you've got a plethora of people responsible for safety in the park, for safety around the park, the highways agencies, the parks people, the police. But actually, do women and girls think that there is somebody who has some sort of obligation to try and make spaces safe for them? So do women and girls actually think that it is somebody's job, other than the police, but it's someone else's job to do this? So do they think that? And does it matter whether or not they think that? And this comes also from a conversation Julia and I were having with some young women. And we said, do you think anybody's responsible for designing a space that works for you? And they're like, no. So I think that was one question. Second sort of thought was about this idea of the girl effect. And the girl effect, I know that it was seen a lot in international development aid work. And there was some critique of it, because the point was, well, are we putting the burden on teenage girls to dismantle the patriarchy? And if we are, is that fair? So how do we balance involving women and girls in design without making them responsible for solving the problems that they have had very little part in creating? And the risk that if you have girls co-designing a park and it then gets trashed, everyone will go, well, there you go, you see, we tried it, we gave the power to the girls, and it didn't work. So there's that thing about the girl effect. And then finally, really picking up on your point, Estelle, about, the boys can go anywhere. And there's also something I think that Linda said, whether men and boys are actually in the room or not, the fact is that in discussions amongst women and girls about how they use the public realm, men and boys are always there. It's a very present thing, whether they're physically present or not. When women and girls discuss safety in the public realm, men and boys feature hugely in that discussion. What role does the presence of women and girls play when men and boys are talking about how they perceive and use public space? What's the flip side of that prominence we see in the girls' discussions?
Great, thanks. Carl?
Yeah, just a few reflections. So with Vanya's talk, I picked up on her question of, does it make sense to compare internationally? And I think absolutely. We should be looking over the garden fence to see what our neighbours are doing, but also taking it in context of their ability to enact change, and often that's linked to budgets. A few years ago at a conference, there was a comparison between UK budgets and European budgets. So a lot of European countries operated around 6% of the city budget on parks and green spaces. UK, I think, is now around 2 to 3%. I was in Istanbul a few years ago, and the new mayor was operating 10% of the city budget on parks and green spaces. So context is really important, but competition drives change. On Linda's talk, I picked up on the word freedom appeared in a couple of the girls' quotes. And we need to kind of, linking to Estelle's mention of storytelling, it is a freedom issue. You can use the words don't have access, or you can use the words not free. So I think how we communicate this issue with key decision makers, politicians and funders is really important, because it's not just about freedom to walk and access, it's about freedom of expression, representation, and freedom for women and girls to be themselves. So I think as we're trying to influence change, we need to really think about telling the story as well. With Ramina's talk, I sort of reflecting on the focus on engagement through your youth engagement, and it kind of circles back a bit to, you mentioned that engagement has a longer lasting effect than is initially apparent. And going back to George's comments earlier about speaking to men and boys about the issues, maybe asking the questions introduces reflection in men and boys, and that reflection and awareness that may not have been there before. that's like maybe a lower version of Julia's Trojan horse. You know, maybe it's like a Shetland pony horse. So yeah, I think we should be engaging men and boys in that way. And finally, on Estelle's talk, I mean, it's money. It really is money. I hate to sound like I'm in the Wizard of Oz with lions and tigers and bears, but it's staffing, funding, and resources that will really make a difference here. Yes, there will be a thinking change that will result from this research and guidance, but it really does need a lot of money to make big impact on this.
Great. Thank you both. Thank you both.